There comes a moment, quiet and almost unnoticeable, when something inside you whispers, "Enough." Not in anger, not in frustration, but with the calm weight of truth. You see, you weren't born to be ruled by other people's moods. You weren't created to crumble each time someone speaks carelessly or forgets your worth. You've simply been taught to react, conditioned to explode, to justify, to defend, to please. But there is another way, and that's why you're here. You saw the words, "Anger, gone, just do this," and something in you leaned forward. Because you've known the burn of anger, you've felt your chest tighten at a sharp word. You've laid awake at night replaying conversations, inventing better comebacks, wishing you had stayed silent or wishing you hadn't. So here's the question. What if you never had to feel that way again? What if you could walk through life like a mountain, still, strong, unmoved by wind or storm? Not numb, not cold, but clear, rooted. Powerful in your calm. This isn't a fantasy, it's not denial. It's a discipline, and the Stoics, men like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they laid down the steps long before we ever had names for anxiety or emotional burnout. They knew something we forget, that no one can make you angry without your permission. That peace is not something people give you, it's something you refuse to give away. So today, I won't give you a lecture. I won't ask you to suppress what you feel or pretend you don't care. Instead, I'll tell you a story in 8 parts. Each one a door you can open to something steadier than anger, more enduring than pride. Each one a quiet revolution, leading you away from being triggered and toward being timeless. You'll discover what it means to see clearly, to let go of what doesn't belong to you, to walk away from the fight without feeling like you lost, and to realize, perhaps for the first time, that peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you practice. So take a breath with me. Let the noise fall away for a moment. You don't need to prove anything right now. You don't need to defend yourself. You're not here to fight the world. You're here to remember who you are when you stop letting the world decide that for you. Ready? Let's begin. This is how the fire inside you becomes light instead of heat. This is where anger ends and self-mastery begins. Just do this and watch what happens. Chapter 1. The Gate of Control. What you truly own. So now that we've stepped past the noise, let us begin where all true strength begins. Not in the fists, not in the voice, but in the gate you guard every day, sometimes without even knowing it. It is the gate of control. And here's the truth the Stoics whispered to themselves in silence while chaos reigned outside. Some things are up to us, some are not. Know the difference, and you will be free. It sounds simple, but like all timeless truths, it takes a quiet courage to live it. Because most of us, we're trained to reach for control where it doesn't belong. We try to fix people who don't want to be fixed. We try to change outcomes already shaped by hands other than ours. We try to carry emotions that weren't even born in our own hearts. And then we wonder why we feel exhausted, bitter, why our peace always seems one argument away from collapsing. But the Stoics knew this weariness. They felt it too. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. He led armies, watched friends betray him, faced plague and war and the burden of immense power. And yet, he wrote late at night in the quiet of his tent, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What does that mean for you, here and now? It means this: you don't control what people say to you, but you control what you say to yourself after they walk away. You don't control whether they text you back, but you control the stories you build in the silence. You don't control the world's pace, the promotion, the driver who cuts you off, The news cycle, the opinion. But you control one small, steady flame, your response. And that is enough. Because the moment you stop wasting energy trying to hold the reins of other people's behavior, you reclaim all that energy for yourself. It flows back into your voice, now softer. Into your breath, now slower. Into your decisions, now deliberate. You stop reacting. You start choosing. There's a story often told in the old Stoic tradition of a man who wandered from town to town, carrying a heavy sack. He believed it held the judgments of others, the promises of the future, the guilt of the past. But when he finally opened it, he found it empty, only his own thoughts inside. He'd been walking with weight that wasn't his, and haven't we all? We carry the burden of how others might see us. We try to anticipate their words, their moods, their motives, but none of those are within our gate. None of them are ours to manage. The gate is here, your thoughts, your breaths, your values, your next step. And when someone provokes you, unintentionally or otherwise, you have a choice. Do you chase their storm, or do you return home to your own stillness? That's what Epictetus meant when he said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. It doesn't mean you're weak if you feel the anger rise. It means you're human, but it also means you have the power to stand at the gate, to say, this reaction is not worthy of my energy, my clarity, my values. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not react at all, not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. You've stopped guarding the wrong doors, and you've started tending your own. This is the first threshold, the beginning of Stoic calm, the place where you reclaim your energy not by holding tighter, but by letting go of what was never yours. And when you walk through that gate, what you'll feel isn't numbness, it's peace, not given, not borrowed, but built brick by brick. Choice by choice, right here, right now, that gate is open. Will you walk through? Chapter 2, The Mirror of Perception. Change how you see, and you are free. So now that you've stepped through the gate and reclaimed what's truly yours, there's something else waiting just beyond the threshold. It's not a dragon. It's not a storm. It's something far quieter and far more dangerous. It is the way you see, not the world itself, but the lens through which you interpret it. And the Stoics knew that lens, your perception, is the root of every emotion you feel, not the insult, not the silence, not the betrayal, but what you believe they meant. Epictetus whispered this hard truth. It's not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And suddenly everything changes, because if that's true, then your anger doesn't come from what someone said. It comes from the meaning you gave their words. That's the mirror, the one you carry inside. And like all mirrors, it reflects you before it ever reflects them. Let me tell you a quiet story. There once was a traveler who entered a small village. As he walked down the path, he passed a man who barely glanced at him. The traveler frowned. How rude, he thought. He must not like me. Perhaps he's judging the way I walk or the clothes I wear. He carried that thought with him all day, and his heart grew heavy. But what he didn't know, what he never saw, was that the villager had just lost his father. The glance wasn't judgment. It was sorrow. But the traveler's mirror had twisted it into rejection. That's what our minds do, without asking our permission. They create stories. They fill in blanks with fear. And soon the world becomes hostile, not because it is, but because we expect it to be. The Stoics saw this danger long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." At first, it sounds almost too simple. But what he's saying is this: Pain doesn't start with the event. It begins with the story. Someone ignores you. You tell yourself it's personal. Someone criticizes you. You tell yourself it defines your worth. But what if you paused? What if just for a breath you questioned your mirror? Is this true? Or is this just how I feel in this moment? Suddenly the fog lifts. You realize you don't have to take every glance personally. You don't have to accept every comment as truth. You don't have to wear the weight of someone else's bad day. You are free to see it differently, and the moment you do, you begin to change. Because when you shift perception, you shift power. You stop being a victim of what happens, and you become a student of how it affects you. You stop saying, "They made me feel this way," and you start asking, "Why did this touch something inside me?" That's the work. That's the journey. That's how you polish the mirror. And over time, your vision clears. You stop looking for offense. You start looking for truth. You stop assuming the worst. You begin giving the benefit of the doubt, not because people always deserve it, but because you do. You deserve the peace that comes from not carrying invented battles. So here is your task, quiet and noble. Guard your perception like sacred ground. Notice the stories you tell. Question them. Transform them. When someone speaks, hear them, but also hear your own thoughts about them. When something upsets you, ask gently, "Is this real, or is this a shadow I cast on the wall?" And if it's only a shadow, let it pass. Because you're not here to fight every ghost. You're here to walk with clarity, to meet the world as it is, without distortion. The mirror is yours, and once you learn to polish it, nothing can cloud your peace again. Chapter 3. The Cloak of Silence. Where power hides. Now that you've begun to polish the mirror, questioning the stories, softening the sharp edges of perception, there is a deeper stillness waiting for you. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it simply waits. It is silence, and though the world treats silence like an absence, the Stoics knew it as a cloak, a garment of strength worn by the wise, because what comes out of your mouth reveals what lives inside your mind. And those who speak less often speak better. They think more clearly. They carry themselves with intention, not impulse. To the Stoics, silence is not emptiness, it is presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Open your mouth only if what you are about to say is more beautiful than silence." And in that one line, a world unfolds. Imagine walking through your day wearing a cloak of silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer need to prove, to defend, to explain, to control. You listen more, you observe more. You speak only when the words serve peace, not pride. This kind of silence isn't cold or passive, it's disciplined. It's knowing that a single breath held longer can spare you hours of regret, because anger loves noise. It thrives in reactions. And every time we lash back, raise our voice, argue our worth, we feed the very thing we wish to be free from. But silence? Silence is the space where anger dies out from lack of air. Let me tell you a story. There was once a blacksmith, famous for his skill and feared for his temper. One day, a young apprentice spilled water on the forge and ruined a day's work. The room fell silent. The boy braced for the shouting, but the blacksmith said nothing. He looked, he breathed, he stepped outside. Hours later, he returned with calm eyes and steady hands. He did not bring punishment. He brought 2 mugs of water and said, "We begin again." When asked how he controlled his fury, he simply said, "The silence outside gave me space to find the silence within. This is the cloak. And when you wear it, the world may try to shake you, but you won't rattle, because not every insult deserves your energy. Not every invitation to battle must be accepted. You begin to notice those who shout the most are often the most unsure, and those who move quietly, with purpose, often hold the greatest depth. Silence becomes your compass, not because you're hiding, but because you're holding something sacred, your peace. And when conflict comes, as it always does, you'll have a new kind of armor. Not the brittle shell of defensiveness, but the strong, woven cloak of stillness. You'll hear words designed to provoke you. But you'll pause, you'll feel the sting of disrespect, but you won't flinch. You'll see drama unfolding around you, but you'll stay rooted like an old tree that's seen many storms, because silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom with its boots on. It gives you time to choose, to ask, is this response helpful? Or is it just noise dressed as power? And more often than not, you'll find you don't need to respond at all. The world will keep spinning. The sun will rise again, and your peace will remain untouched. So here is your invitation. Wear your silence not as a mask, but as a mantle. Let it soften your reactions. Let it guide your steps. Let it become the rhythm of your breath before you speak. And when others ask why you are so calm, so unbothered, you can simply smile, quietly, and keep walking, because power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it simply does not respond. Chapter 4. The Flame You Choose to Feed. Amor, Fati. Now that silence has wrapped around you like a warm cloak, shielding you from the winds of impulse and noise, another choice emerges, gentler, but no less powerful. It is not about defense. It is about direction, not about how you protect your peace, but what you decide to do with the fire inside you. Because fire, you see, is not the enemy. It can burn, yes, but it can also warm, it can also guide. And the Stoics, wise in their quiet strength, whispered a phrase that has passed from tongue to tongue across centuries. Amor, Fati, love of fate, not simply acceptance, not quiet endurance, but love for what life hands you, even when it comes wrapped in bitterness. Because when anger comes, when life breaks your rhythm, it always brings a choice. You can feed the flame of resistance, or you can feed the flame of meaning. Let me tell you a story. Once, there was a candle maker who lived in a small, forgotten village. One day, a storm came and took everything: his home, his tools, his peace. The villagers expected him to curse the sky. Instead, he lit a small candle from the ashes of his burned-down shop. And he said, "If this is what fate brings, then I will shape light from it." Years later, that candle became a tradition, lit each year to remind the people, we are not what happens to us, we are what we choose to do with it. This is Amor, Fati. Not just loving the joy, but loving the fire that refines you, not because it's easy, but because it makes you strong. When someone disrespects you, do you burn with vengeance, or do you burn with purpose? When life denies you what you hoped for, do you smolder in resentment, or do you glow in acceptance, saying, this too is mine? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the pain isn't a block, it's the path. The insult isn't your downfall, it's your practice. The rejection isn't punishment, it's redirection. You can feed the fire of why me, or the fire of now watch me. You see, anger begs for a target. It wants you to point fingers, to fuel blame, but purpose turns that same flame inward and creates warmth, clarity, courage. This isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength of all. To look pain in the eye and say, thank you. You will not define me, but you will sharpen me. Epictetus knew suffering. He was born a slave, walked with a limp, but he said, do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Welcome them as they happen. Because the truth is, life will break your expectations. It will bring people who misunderstand you. It will hand you losses you didn't deserve. It will ask you to keep going on days when your feet feel like stone. But you were not born to be a puppet to circumstance. You were born to shape it. And every time you say, "I choose to find meaning in this," you feed the fire that lights the road ahead. So choose your flame. Let the anger come if it must, but don't let it own you. Don't let it become you. Let it pass through you and leave behind a brighter light. Because Amor, Fati is not about pretending that pain doesn't exist. It's about standing beside the flame and saying, "You will not consume me. You will become part of my light." And that, my friend, is how even the darkest moments can begin to glow. Chapter 5. The Bridge of Forgiveness, not for them, but for you. And so if you have begun to feed the flame with meaning instead of anger, there comes a time when you must cross the next threshold. It is not easy, it is not loud, but it is necessary. This is the chapter of forgiveness, not as a favor to others, but as a gift to your own soul. You see, most people think forgiveness is about excusing what was done, about pretending it didn't matter, about letting someone off the hook. But the Stoics knew better. Forgiveness is not about them, it's about your freedom. Because the truth is, when you hold on to anger, it does not burn the one who wronged you. It burns you, quietly, slowly, like smoke in the lungs. It tightens the chest, clouds the mind, keeps you tied to a moment that's already passed. Marcus Aurelius once asked himself this: when someone wrongs you, what are you holding on to? A judgment. Let it go. This is not softness. It is strength. It is you saying, "I choose not to carry what does not belong to me anymore." Let me share a story. In a village by the edge of the forest, there was once an old healer. People came to her with wounds, illnesses, broken hearts. She helped them all. But there was one man she would never speak to, the man who betrayed her when she was young. He had grown old too. He came often, sat on her porch, said nothing. One night, the villagers asked her why she never healed him. She looked at them quietly and said, "Because I haven't yet healed what he broke in me." That night she walked into the woods, lit a candle, sat with her pain, and when she returned the next morning, she handed him a bowl of herbs and said, "This isn't for you. It's for the silence that's lived too long in my chest." Forgiveness is that bowl. It is the bridge you build, not to go back to what was, but to cross over into who you are becoming. Seneca, another voice of calm in an age of noise, once said, "Anger is like falling into madness." When you forgive, you are not saying, "It was okay." You are saying, "I will no longer be ruled by this," because justice may never come the way you wish. Apologies may never arrive, some people may never change, but none of that is needed for you to heal. Forgiveness is a door you open from the inside. It doesn't mean you invite everyone back in. It doesn't mean you forget. It means you choose peace over poison. You choose growth over grudge. You choose presence over the past. And slowly the heaviness lifts, not all at once, but breath by breath. You'll notice it in small ways. The way your jaw doesn't tighten when you hear their name. The way your mind no longer rewrites the story late at night. The way your heart finally has room for something new. This is the bridge, and no one can walk it for you. But once you do, you will not walk alone, because the moment you lay your anger down, life meets you with open arms, not to erase the past, but to welcome your return to the present. So if you're still holding pain, know this: it is not your fault that someone hurt you, but it is your choice whether to keep living under their shadow. Choose light, Choose freedom. Choose to forgive, not for them, but for the peace waiting on the other side of the bridge. Chapter 6. The Fortress Within. Build your stoic inner citadel. Now that you've stepped across the bridge of forgiveness, your hands lighter, your heart less burdened, you may begin to feel a quiet truth rising from within. The world may not change. People may still provoke. But you are not the same. Something sacred has been stirred, and now it's time to protect it. The Stoics spoke of a place that no insult could reach, no chaos could shatter. They called it the inner citadel, a fortress not made of stone but of steady thoughts, not guarded by soldiers but by virtue and resolve. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." This citadel, this inner refuge, it is not a wall to hide behind. It is a foundation to stand upon. A home you build inside yourself, stone by stone, thought by thought. Let me tell you a tale. In a land often shaken by war and winter, there lived a stonemason. While others built great castles to defend against armies, he worked alone, shaping something different. A small courtyard, a stone bench, a hearth that never went cold. When asked why he didn't build taller walls, he simply said, "If I am well within, nothing without can breach me." And so, year after year, as battles came and went, his home was untouched. Not because no one attacked, but because nothing outside ever ruled his inside. That is your inner citadel. And every day, you are either building it or leaving its doors open to every storm. So what forms the stones of this fortress? Your values. Your boundaries, your refusal to be owned by opinion, by praise, or by blame. It's in the way you pause before speaking, the way you breathe before judging, the way you return to yourself before reacting. Because the more time you spend inside this quiet stronghold, the less you'll be dragged by noise. People will talk, let them. Situations will spiral. Let them. You don't need to enter every arena, not when your peace is already defended from within. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And what is a fortress if not a place where mastery begins? When you build it, here's what happens. You stop needing validation. You stop chasing fairness from the unfair. You stop proving yourself to people too distracted to understand you, because the fortress reminds you you already know who you are, and it cannot be taken. Not by rejection, not by betrayal, not even by failure. But here's the secret. This citadel must be visited daily. It's not built in one grand act. It's built in the quiet moments, choosing restraint when anger tempts, choosing dignity when others stoop low, choosing clarity when confusion knocks. Every time you do, you lay another brick. And over time, you'll notice you don't break when they ignore you. You don't crumble when things fall apart. You don't chase what cannot be caught. Because you have something far greater, a home that no one else can enter unless you let them. So build it, slowly, steadily, without show. Make it simple but unshakable. Let its door open only for kindness, wisdom, and truth. And when the world outside is too loud, too cruel, too wild, you will not run, you will return. To the place within yourself where calm lives, to the citadel that no one can storm, to the self that no longer needs the world to behave. This is how you become unbreakable, not by hardening, but by rooting. Not by resisting the storm, but by knowing you already have shelter inside it. Chapter 7. The Crown of Virtue. Choose who you want to be. And now that your fortress stands, calm, unshaken, sheltering your peace, there comes a deeper choice, the kind that turns quiet endurance into noble living. Because a strong wall is not enough, a still mind is not enough. You must choose the character you wish to wear each day like a crown. The Stoics called it virtue, not in the way of perfection or piety or praise, but in the way of clarity, in the way of deciding with each sunrise, this is who I will be, no matter what the world throws at me. Because you cannot control the behavior of others, but you can decide what kind of person their behavior will awaken in you. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." There is a quiet dignity in that, a strength not drawn from revenge or reaction, but from alignment with your deepest principles. Let me tell you a story. Once there was a farmer who lived beside a crooked merchant. The merchant cheated, lied, spoke poorly of the farmer in the marketplace. But the farmer, each morning, rose early, tended his fields, treated his workers with fairness, and shared what little he had with the hungry. When asked why he didn't defend himself against the merchant's words, the farmer said, "My character will speak longer than his noise." And over time, it did. The merchant faded, the farmer remained, because storms may rage, but virtue does not rot. It stays, it steadies, it speaks, even when you don't. So, what is virtue? To the Stoics, it was not something given by birth, nor a title granted by others. It was a practice, a way of being, wisdom, to see things clearly, to learn, to listen, to choose thoughtfully, courage, to act with strength when fear whispers retreat. Justice, to be fair, not only when it's easy, but especially when it costs something. Temperance, to hold back, to measure, to keep one's desires in harmony with reason. These are not soft things. They are steel wrapped in gentleness, and every time you respond with them, when you are tested, insulted, overlooked, you are not just avoiding anger, you are becoming someone unshakable. You're not just keeping your peace, you're shaping your soul. Anger often demands you react fast. Virtue invites you to respond slow. Anger says, get even. Virtue says, rise above. Anger says, they must feel what I felt. Virtue whispers, let them feel what they've chosen. I remain myself. This is not about being a saint. It's about being centered. It's about remembering in each small test, on the road, in conversation, online, that you are never forced to abandon your values. Even when others are cruel, even when you are right, even when it would feel so satisfying to lash out, because that satisfaction is temporary. But virtue builds forever. You wear it not for applause, but for peace. You choose it not for reward, but for self-respect. And when you look back on your days, it will not be your victories that bring you peace, but the moments you chose to live aligned with your highest self. So choose. Every day, every hour, every test. Who do you want to be? Not in the eyes of others, but in the stillness of your own. That, dear listener, is your true crown, and no one can take it from you. Chapter 8. The Mountain View. Nothing lasts, not even anger, and now crowned with virtue you stand taller. Not above others, but above the storm, and from this higher place, this summit of calm, you begin to see something even more humbling. Everything passes, the words that once stung, the people who once mattered too much, the thoughts that once haunted your nights, all of it, like mist in the morning light. The Stoics understood this deeply, not as a reason for despair, but as a call to serenity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, all is ephemeral, both the remembered and the remembering, because even your fiercest anger, your deepest wound, your strongest reaction. They are temporary tenants in the house of your mind. But you are the keeper of that house. Let me tell you a quiet story. There was once an old woman who lived near the cliffs where the ocean never ceased its roaring. People asked her how she could sleep at night with such noise. She smiled and said, "The waves never stop, but I've learned to watch them from above." She did not try to quiet the sea. She did not shout back at the wind. She simply climbed higher every day until the chaos below became part of the view, not part of her. This is what the mountain gives you: perspective, distance, stillness. Because when you are caught in the valley of your feelings, everything feels permanent. But from the mountain, you see how small they are in the vastness of your life. That rude comment, gone in hours. That betrayal, already softening at the edges. Even the tension in your body, the heat in your chest when anger rises. If you pause, if you breathe, if you wait, it passes. Everything does. And so the question becomes, will you let your soul be anchored to what is fleeting? Or will you root yourself in what remains? You see, the Stoics didn't teach indifference. They taught impermanence. And with that comes compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. Because sometimes you will fail. You will react, you will speak in heat or hold a grudge longer than you'd like, but even that will pass. And you will return to your breath, to your center, to your higher place. Seneca once wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than is necessary." Worry, resentment, anger, these are weights we strap to ourselves long after the moment has gone. But what if you set them down? What if instead of clinging to the feeling, you watched it drift like a cloud, knowing it will not stay? What if you said to yourself, "This too is passing through me. I do not have to hold it." You would smile more, judge less, and live lighter. You would see people not as threats, but as travelers, just like you, carrying their own invisible burdens. Some will walk with grace, some will stumble, some will lash out. But all of them, like you, are just passing through. This is the mountain view. And once you've seen it, once you've stood in that silence and felt the wind of time brushing past your face, you'll never again be fooled into thinking that anger is who you are. It's just weather. You are the sky, so let the winds come, let the storms rise. You no longer need to chase them or fear them, because from this place, high and steady, you know what truly lasts. Not the insult, not the injury, but the strength you've grown, the peace you've protected, and the view that reminds you every single day you are above the noise now. You are free, the quiet you carry forward. So now, dear traveler, you've walked the long path through the gate of control, past the mirror of perception, wearing the cloak of silence, tending the fire of Amor, Fati, crossing the bridge of forgiveness, resting within your fortress, crowning yourself in virtue, and rising to the mountain where the world finally quiets. You are no longer a prisoner of anger. You are no longer a servant to reaction. You have become the watcher, the guardian, the calm within the storm. Not because life stopped testing you, but because you remembered who you are while being tested. This is Stoicism, not as theory, but as practice. Not as cold philosophy, but as a warm compass in a world that often spins too fast. And now that you carry this stillness with you, don't keep it to yourself. Let it ripple. Let someone feel safer around your silence. Let someone feel lighter because you didn't react in kind. Let someone feel seen because you listened first and judged later, if at all. The world needs that kind of strength, and it begins with you. If this journey stirred something inside you, If you felt even a flicker of peace, a breath of clarity, a sense of coming home to yourself, then stay with us. Subscribe to the Stoic Philosophy to walk this path further. We'll keep telling stories that awaken stillness. We'll keep learning to live deeper, not louder. And if someone you care about is still carrying the weight of anger, share this video. You might just hand them the key they didn't know they were looking for. And if you feel ready, leave a quiet promise in the comments below. I choose calm, no need to explain. No need to convince, just a signal, a seed. Because peace begins with a decision. And today, you made it. Welcome home.